You are about to listen to a free portion of The Young Turks. To podcast the complete show, sign up for membership at tytnetwork.com/membership.
Welcome to The Young Turks. It's a Friday show. Wait a minute. What is this? This is not our regular studio. I love saying that every time. We're at USC. Ben Banquist, John Inarola, Anna Kasparian, Jake Uger. Do we have a power panel drop it thing? If we do, go ahead and drop it. If we don't, let's just move on.
And we carry on.
Okay, we got an awesome show for you guys. I was just telling these guys off air that when we used to do shows at different places like the Museum in D.C., YouTube Space LA, I'd feel slightly uncomfortable. Now I feel super comfortable. I feel like, obviously, on Fridays we do shows at USC.
Not a big deal.
Obviously, Annenberg School. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, one of my regrets is that I didn't go to the Annenberg School, because Penn, where I went undergrad, also had an Annenberg School of Communication, which would have made a ton of sense. Instead, I went to the douchebag school of Wharton, where my fellow douchebag Donald Trump went.
I'm talking about your...
I mean, yeah, do we have news or anything like that? No, probably not. All right, so in the first hour, we're going to get into the town halls. I'm full of rage over it. I'm going to continue to be full of rage. But then later, we're going to enlighten a little bit. We're going to switch around from rage to a little bit of information. The Koch brothers are coming after electric cars.
Thank God.
Yeah, about time somebody put Tesla in its place,
My
right?
lease is almost up.
Yeah, we're going to fight back, and we're going to explain to you why they're actually doing that and why it's such a bad idea.
I think we know why they're doing it.
Well, a lot of people actually know them.
Just did.
A lot of people actually know them from all their industrial part of their company, right?
Yeah.
Dixie cups, yada yada. But they also have a huge oil part of their company, mainly refineries. So we'll get in that a little bit, and then. An important endorsement for Hillary Clinton, which will be totally meaningless as usual. But I'll tell you why. Well, actually, you're right, John. There should be a little there, because this guy might be irrelevant in South Carolina for reasons we'll explain, but also why he decided to endorse Hillary Clinton and not Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders is closer to his worldview. I have the answer. I have the answer. And then the Pope says, let them have sex, but not necessarily have babies.
Right?
And a fake gynecologist. So all that on the show. So without further ado, we're going to get started, and I'm going to start. Okay. Now, normally on a Friday panel show, Johnny Pie takes it away, and he will in a second.
There's been enough of that for too many years.
Yeah, there has.
Yeah.
It's about time somebody else got to present a couple of stories. Okay, John. Just give me a chance, John. Okay. So we're going to start on the town halls. So over the last couple of days, there's been two town halls. Three, actually. That's right. Two on the Republican side on CNN, and then one on the Democratic side last night. So the first night, it was just three of the Republicans, Rubio, Cruz, and Carson. And John and I were covering it live on tytnetwork.com/live, where you should watch all the debates and election nights. And we got in a bit of a rage because the questions to the Republicans were so soft. Now, we showed you that. I'm going to show it to you again, a shorter version of it. And then I want to compare and contrast it to what other town halls have been like to give you a sense of how incredibly conservative the media is, how they are either scared to death of the Republicans or have decided that they are kind of like them and would like to take it easier on them. So I promised you that this is only half of what happened on Wednesday night. We just needed to shorten it a little bit. So this gives you a taste of how soft Anderson Cooper was on all the Republican candidates. Watch.
We know President Obama plays golf. We know former President George W. Bush paints now. He used to clear a brush, probably still does out in Texas. What do you do to relax?
Play pool.
Play pool?
I love to play pool.
Are you competitive when you play pool? What sort of music do you listen to?
I primarily like classical music.
When did you know that Jeanette was the woman for you?
Well, I'd like to think she liked me first, but I liked her first.
How'd you meet? If you are elected president, would you still coach your son in football? In Mason City, I was surprised you mentioned that you're colorblind, which I hadn't realized, and that you should have seen your clothes before your wife started picking them out. Your wife mentioned this to CNN a while back, that you occasionally, when you call her on the phone, you sing to her? You sing musicals? Is that true?
But look, I mean,
What's your favorite musical? Do you want to tell me what reporters you're having drinks with in D.C.? I guess not. What's your favorite cocktail? I understand you're also kind of a night owl. What do you do late at night? Do you watch television? Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Okay, so as you can tell, that was as soft as softballs get, and it was like that all night long. Almost no substantive or hard questions, challenging questions at all.
Are you competitive at pool? I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'd put him on the spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Point well taken, Ben.
Yeah.
Now,
you saw I'm sorry, but you just saw how Carson perked up at that question, like about the classical music. I thought his eyes were closed a shorter amount of time than in a normal question.
Slightly more awake.
Yeah.
Okay, now, yesterday on the program, I showed you that same Anderson Cooper in a Democratic debate, and he lit into Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Please watch that on YouTube. You're going to be amazed by that. Then we got some criticism for people saying, wait, Cenk, that's not fair. One was a town hall, which is supposed to be super soft and more personal, and the other one was a debate that's supposed to be harder. That's why it's apples and oranges. Oh, okay, great. So now let's show you the very next night at town hall on MSNBC. First of all, we're not playing with the tape here. There were no soft questions. There was not a single personal question. There was not a single question about how much they love their wives or what they like to drink. Okay.
Bernie, foot massage or back massage?
Right. None of that.
Right.
Instead, we got this.
With that characterization, but this week you told my colleague John Ralston that your one litmus test for a Supreme Court nominee is overturning Citizens United. So why doesn't that prove what Secretary Clinton says about you? I mean, you didn't say that you have a Roe versus Wade litmus test. You didn't say you had an immigration action litmus test, a marriage equality litmus test.
Last week you said it was a low blow for Secretary Clinton to bring up the past criticisms that you had for President Obama. You said you had every right to disagree with them, but it went further than that. In fact, this is you calling for a primary challenge. No, I get that, but there are some Democrats who want to continue the president's policies. Right. Why should they trust you as somebody who wanted him primaried? You said it would have been a good idea if he would have been primaried.
Well, by the way, there is one of the two Democratic candidates here who actually ran against Barack Obama. It wasn't me. All right. Second of all,
you were pretty tough on Bill Clinton's record, and you said you hit his record on Wall Street. You said this was a guy who wanted to deregulate Wall Street, was for welfare reform, the Welfare Reform Act that you didn't like, and got NAFTA through. It didn't sound like a presidency that you were very pleased with. You know, a common complaint in those European systems has to do with wait times for treatment, wait times for seeing specialists. How do you propose in your Medicare for All system to not have Americans have to deal with rationing of care?
Chuck,
I mean, this is a common, that's why I say it's a common critique in Canada and the UK in particular. Well done.
Senator, you have often talked of the need for a political revolution in the United States. You're a democratic socialist. When some Latinos hear those words, they think Venezuela and Cuba, Chavez and the Castro brothers, 57 years of dictatorship. Talk to the people who escaped those regimes today and hear you use those words and wonder exactly what you have in mind.
Wow.
Now, again, a small taste all night long. And they also, the producers pick who's going to get to ask questions in the town hall. Yeah. They have hundreds of questions to choose from, and they select them. And almost every one of them, there was two that were neutral towards Bernie Sanders. We call it like it is. We're like, oh, okay, that was a question about veterans. That was fine. There was two other questions about veterans that were like, hey, how come do you need to apologize to veterans? Why would Bernie Sanders need to apologize to veterans?
Do you remember the woman? It was a young Hispanic woman. She asked a question about education, about his education policy, and she stumbled a bit over the doubling the cost of the Pell Grants. That question, somebody linked to an article on a conservative blog from last year. It was directly from the blog. Yes. So not only the doubling of the Pell Grants, but will that make it more innovative, more transparent, and more efficient? Those exact adjectives in that exact order on a conservative blog middle of last year.
Chuck Todd at one point bragged that one of the questioners had actually written it out. So thereby implying that the other questioners had not written out their questions. It was likely a producer who got it from a conservative blog and said, okay, you'd like to ask about education. It's not like the person's fake. They're not an intern. They're not a producer. They came in and they said, I'd like to ask Bernie about education. Okay, here's the question. Right? We got it from a conservative blog, and now you ask it. So constantly aggressive. So then, as you saw there, at one point, Bernie had to go, whoa, because he's been attacked so much. And by the way, there were almost equally aggressive, in some parts some questions even more aggressive towards Hillary Clinton.
That's true.
Okay? So Democrats attacked. And you could see it in their tone, too. Chuck Todd, why should they trust you? Right? And why were you against President Obama? Why were you against President Clinton? He's in a Democratic primary. That's like the worst question you can ask him. Now, again, if they're even-handed, that's one thing.
Yeah.
If one side gets, do you like pina coladas? And the other side gets...
Do you like getting caught in the rain?
Right. That would be fair. The other side gets, you have to explain to Latinos why you're not a dictator.
What?
That was the last question from Millard.
You use that as an...
Which, by the way, I think that that's a fair question. I have no problem with the aggressive questioning on the Democratic side. I agree that it needs to be fair on both sides. I actually hate the so-called town hall format where it's supposed to be more personable and you're supposed to ask them flowery questions about what they like and don't like. I know that there are a lot of low information voters who care about those nonsensical things and they want to know how personable a presidential candidate is. But if we just move away from that a little bit and are aggressive on both sides, then I'll be happy. And then I want to make a really quick, irrelevant point. It's amazing how much John...
I was going to make an irrelevant point.
No, I don't want to hear this point.
It's amazing how much John looks like Chuck Todd. Amazing.
I don't want to see the look on JR's face because I know he's so happy with himself right now.
JR's been saying that for years.
Wonderful.
So now, of course, there are some apologists who are going to say, wait a minute, Cenk, it's still not fair. Yes, you showed Anderson Cooper, that same Anderson Cooper, but he was in a debate. Yes, you just showed town hall to town hall, but one was on CNN and the other one was on MSNBC. Okay, so now I've got a town hall for you guys from earlier in this same election where CNN did the town hall. There's no excuse anymore. Oh, well, the debates you're supposed to ask tough questions, but in town halls you're supposed to pitch softballs. Now let's see if Cuomo on CNN at a town hall pitched softballs or hardballs to Bernie Sanders. Let's watch.
We hear people say that you're paying for it is actually punitive. You're going to punish people who make money. You're going to punish the financial district. You're going to punish and wind up changing the idea of an open and free economy because you're going to punish them for speculating, which means they won't speculate as much, which means you won't get as much activity. And if you do a checklist of how you pay for everything, what you're doing is amassing the biggest government ever. After President Clinton said the era of big government was over, seems like Bernie Sanders is saying not only if it's over, I'm going to do it bigger than ever. And what about the idea that you're bringing back the era of big government and making it bigger than ever? Give me a yes or no on that. Is the era of big government back with President Sanders? To pay for this, what you're really asking for is one of the biggest tax hikes in history. And that is the criticism.
Okay.
The top marginal tax rate was 90% for decades.
So he's 100% wrong about that. But what's weird is I didn't hear any questions about what kind of drinks he likes.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard, why are you punishing people? Punish.
Biggest
punish,
government.
punish.
Big government.
Well, big government. You're bringing it back. And how are you going to pay for this?
Yeah.
What I didn't hear CNN asking in the town hall to the Republicans is, hey, you're talking about expanding the military in an unprecedented way. How are you going to pay for it? And isn't that big government?
Yeah.
And don't you, aren't you bringing that back? And then, of course, the biggest tax hike ever. Wait, I thought that it was supposed to be even-handed, that at a town hall we were supposed to play patty cakes.
Yeah.
No, when it comes to Democrats, no patty cakes, nothing but hardballs. When it comes to Republicans, the mainstream media wets themselves.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, I'm so scared. Donald Trump's going to yell at me. Ted Cruz is say I'm going to be a bad guy.
That's what it is, right? I mean, it's not ideology, right? Mm-hmm. It is, and it's Phil Jackson said it. You've been saying it for a long time. I don't really believe you. I disagreed with you in the beginning. I'm 100% convinced. You complain enough. You yell enough. You go after Megan Fox enough. I mean, Megyn Kelly.
Megan Fox, too.
By the way, I got news for you. Megan Fox will get a job at Fox tomorrow. But, you go after reporters hard enough and with enough venom and suggest that that reporters are part of a worldwide powerful orthodoxy that is coming to get the common people and strip away the things that are important to you, eventually they're going to take a step. I know, having been a mainstream reporter for however long I was, 8 years, 10 years, I was sensitive to it.
Yeah.
I was like, don't call me liberal. I'm super liberal, but don't call me liberal. And look at me bend over backwards. Look at me bend over backwards. Where sometimes I do a story and be like, well, I just made that person seem like they knew what they were talking
And
about, and they're
that's
wrong.
why it seems like an infomercial. When you just, if they want to do a town hall and be personable, they do 100 town halls. They're doing town halls in South Carolina and Nevada right now as we're filming this. They can do that. You're giving them the equivalent of millions of dollars by doing it for them. You made the comparison, the joke, do you like pina coladas? Anderson Cooper literally asked him what his favorite cocktail was.
Yep.
And I think that we need to refine our vocabulary a bit because we're saying the questions are too soft. Soft questions exist. A soft question is sitting down with Ted Cruz and saying, so a lot of Americans really like the Second Amendment. What will you do to protect gun rights? That's soft because it just tees up a talking point. These aren't even questions. These are nothing. These are stroking their hair lightly.
I do a lot of interviews, and I've gotten pretty good at them, and there's an art to it, and there are questions that are not hard-hitting political questions that you want to ask to create a conversation that is informative, entertaining, and keeps the conversation going, and hopefully gets you into a frame of mind and a give and take with the person you're interviewing so that you can get more out of them when you ask particularly difficult questions.
You want them to be comfortable, right? And trust you to ask the right questions.
And by the way, sometimes those personal questions tell you even more.
That's right. Sometimes they
none
can't.
of us are against that, but you have got to be even-handed.
Yeah.
If your framing is this guy is lovely to his wife and kids, and this guy's a socialist dictator, well, then you've done a great disservice to the audience because you framed it. The moderator, the guy in charge, has framed it as, you should be careful because this guy is going to raise your taxes and he's a dictator. Watch out for him. And the other guy, well, God, man, he coaches his son's football team and his wife loves him so much. That framing is not only monumentally important in terms of how the audience sees it subconsciously, but as John pointed out, it's millions of dollars of free advertising in essence on TV. Normally you'd have to pay for that. Instead, the Republicans get it for free, and the Democrats get the reverse. It's almost like running negative ads, attack ads against the Democrats.
The only upside to this is for the Democrats is because I think there are two particularly smart, adept candidates, is that I think they inevitably look better at the end of these debates because they've dealt with substantive issues.
They look better, and they're also, look, there's only one political party that has threatened to deny access to networks over hard questions.
That's right.
Right?
That's true.
So I hear you guys on all that, but it's still not fair to make them overcome that burden.
Right. No, I got it. And there's also bounds of reason to the attack that you make on Bernie. I mean, there's a way to ask those questions. Look, America has a Chris Cuomo problem, right? But there are ways that those questions get asked that are interesting. You can ask a fair question that puts Bernie Sanders on the spot to explain legitimately how are you going to pay for this, and what sort of executive actions might you take without a Congress that is probably not going to cooperate with you. And should Americans be afraid? Afraid's probably the wrong word, but should Americans fear? Again, it's apparently hard to do. But, what will you do if faced with a Congress that won't do it? Will you spend money? How will you pay for it? What compromises are you prepared to make when you realize that you can't pay for it? Yeah. And then if he can go, I'm positive I can pay for it, we're going to have a revolution. And if he keeps answering that question, that wouldn't satisfy me, but it might satisfy a lot of people, but that would be Bernie Sanders' choice in how to answer it.
And I welcome that question. I think it's the role of journalists to ask those questions. To both sides. Yeah. Here's the deal I'll make with the mainstream media, because they won't let us do the debates because the Republicans will be so scared of us. I mean, they couldn't possibly answer our questions. Donald Trump would probably literally leave in the middle and cry in the hallway, right? Mm-hmm. So they get the mainstream media guys to play patty cakes with them. And so what I'm asking you guys is just ask 50% of what you ask the Democrats to the Republicans. Let's just call a deal. Yeah. I mean, you don't even ask 25% as hard a question to the Republicans. So if we could do that, then maybe we'd have a deal. And by the way, so yes, the huge part of it is the intimidation that the Republicans have done. Also, some part of it is Comcast. They say the media is liberal. What does it mean? When Ben worked in the media, yes, he was a liberal human being who happened to work in the media. But the media is owned by and operated by, in this case, the MSNBC and CNN, Time Warner and Comcast. I can assure you, Time Warner and Comcast are not liberal. Okay, that is not what they do. Yeah. They're a giant corporation that is deeply conservative. And
deeply conservative fiscally and regulatorily. I mean, they're probably indifferent or perhaps liberal on social issues. I mean,
No, they're robots. Let's just call it what it is, right? So it's not like there is a Mr. Comcast, okay? And the robot wants lower taxes.
Or a Miss Comcast.
That's right. I don't want to step on any toes there. Okay, so they want lower taxes so they can have more for their bottom line. They want less regulation. They want to be able to merge, et cetera. They have these things. To them, if they make slightly more money by being socially liberal, for example, in gay rights, sure, have at it, right?
Yeah.
But most of their incentives are going to lean in the conservative and Republican direction. And then finally, Chris Cuomo and Chuck Todd and Anderson Cooper, they all live in the vat of the establishment. So in that stew, it's not that they're bad people. It's just that everyone around them thinks, wow, Bernie Sanders is really going to punish all the rich.
Yeah.
And so Chris Cuomo doesn't think that that's a unfair question. He thinks that's what all my friends are asking. Yeah. Is Bernie Sanders going to punish us?
Chris, aren't you going to ask him? You need to ask him.
Yeah,
that's
right. He's going to punish us.
And you combine that.
You should say punish like 4 times
which he did.
in a row. Yeah.
Combine that with a perpetual fear of losing their multi-million-dollar yearly contracts, which we're going to see in the Anderson Cooper Donald Trump story as well.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's inside that bubble. And an overwhelming fear that you'll be accused of being a liberal, which somehow seems like it would just, you feel like it would derail your career. How long is Joe Scarborough on in the morning for? 3 hours or
17 hours?
I think that they are extending it to 4 now.
Well, let's say for the purposes of this, because it'll make it a better point, let's say 4.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so 4 hours, and then this is the liberal network. So that guy's on for 4 hours in the morning. This show's named after him. And that's Jose Diaz-Balart. I'm trying to think of an equivalent, right? And I'm coming up, the name that comes into my head. So, okay, for the Republican debate, Keith Ellison is going to ask the questions. The liberal Muslim congressman from Minnesota is going to ask. Like, Jose Diaz-Balart is a extreme right-wing conservative. He and his brother, and that question about, first of all, he's got no accent. I'm not buying Venezuela. I'm not buying Venezuela. I'm not. Just say Venezuela. I know you can do it. I know it. But he's got a thing with Venezuela and Hugo Chavez. He's got a thing with Castro because I don't remember the history now, but I'm 97% sure if it's not the Diaz-Balarts, it's all their friends. They lost their land. Castro came and took their land, and so that's his motivation in that question. I'm not my dad was a bit of a Castro fan, but I'm not I got it. First of all, as dictators go, he's in the better half of dictators, right? But these guys, and never acknowledging the brutal, horrible dictatorship which caused a legitimate revolution in Cuba in 1958 that we caused by propping up a brutal.
And if Sanders starts seizing land, then we'll oppose it.
So it's that's like saying having Elizabeth Warren resign, and then she gets to ask the Republicans all the questions, which, by the way, is a debate we'd all watch.
Yeah. But look, to be fair, I think that question, as unfair as it seemed, was a good question, because there are a lot of Cubans in Florida who look at someone like Bernie Sanders and they think that he's a communist. They think that he's going to advocate for what happened in Cuba to happen in the United States. So for him to have an opportunity to answer that question, I think is important. The framing wasn't perfect.
No. I don't even care about that question. Sure, ask him all the fair, unfair questions in the world. Then ask Trump, hey, 40% of the country thinks you're a fascist. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, what they did with Jews is they banned them from the country, and they talked about giving them making them wear certain things. You said the same exact thing about Muslims. So can you explain to us why you're not a fascist?
Yeah, that would be a great question.
But here's the thing. Like, I agree with you. There obviously still are and growing irrelevancy for these people in South Florida as the Cuban American population gets younger and the president is going to Cuba and nobody cares anymore. That's why the embargo's over. It had its 50-year run.
Yeah, right? Some reporters think people care.
Right, but Jose Diaz-Balart, I know it in my bones. If he spent 4 minutes explaining, because he is a conduit where that information might be listened to, and he could say, hey, I could see you guys probably aren't going to vote for Bernie Sanders. You're Republicans. You're conservative Republicans. Bernie Sanders is not going to seize land like Fidel Castro. Right. And if Jose Diaz-Balart thinks that's a possibility, which I'm sure he has never disabused anyone of, I'm not sure, I'm guessing. But if he believes that, then he has absolutely no business working at MSNBC or anywhere. He can go work for Alex Jones or somewhere else on the web where they espouse crazy conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
All right, John, what's next?
Okay, everything else is next. Let's move on to Donald Trump. Like Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump has, at least in part, attempted to establish his credibility and his judgment as a potential commander-in-chief by pointing to his supposed opposition to the war in Iraq before the war in Iraq actually began. But unlike Bernie Sanders, he can't actually point to a speech and a vote against the war in Iraq, which Bernie Sanders did do, again, before the war actually began. And so he says there's evidence, but he has not been able to produce any evidence. And unfortunately for him, as of the town hall that was conducted last night, some evidence as to his position on the war in Iraq has actually come about, an interview with Howard Stern, but it's not going to reinforce his position. Let's watch.
The enemy is, and a lot of times the politicians don't want to tell you that.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
And so what you saw there was him on Howard Stern. We know it was him on Howard Stern. No one's questioning that it was him in 2002 before the war actually began. Now, this obviously seems to contradict what he has been saying in an attempt to differentiate himself from other Republican candidates. And so last night, Anderson Cooper decided to bring up this new evidence in the most cowardly way possible. Let's watch.
That I have not heard it. It includes an audio clip of what appears to be you on Howard Stern talking on the radio on September 11th, 2002. He asked you, are you for invading Iraq? You said, yeah, I guess so. I wish the first time it was done correctly. Is that accurate? Do you remember saying that?
No, but I mean, I could have said that. Nobody asked me. I wasn't a politician. It was probably the first time anybody asked me that question. But by the time the war started, that was quite a bit before.
Yeah, this was 2002.
Yeah, by the time the war started, I was against the war. A lot of people said, it was so early that even if it was a little bit after the war, I mean, he was totally against the war. I was very much against it. That was probably the first time I was ever even asked about the war. But that was probably the first time, I don't remember that, but it was probably the first time I was asked about it.
Sure. And again, I haven't heard it, but you may have said
this. Yeah, I may have. When you're in the private sector, you get asked things, and you're not a politician. And probably the first time I was asked, by the time the war started, I was against it, and shortly thereafter.
Okay, so a couple of things we got to point out there. That's him on Howard Stern. Everybody knows it's him. So Anderson Cooper says, it appears to be you, I haven't actually listened to it. Like, he wouldn't even expose himself to the information so that he would have plausible deniability to say that it was not actually him. Then he reads it and says, do you remember that? No, not do you remember that. You said that. It contradicts what you've been saying now. Respond. Give him the chance to respond. That's being a responsible journalist. But not implying in 5 different ways that what we know is true is not true.
That's because Trump will come out and say, if he might say, it's not me. It's not me. And then he doesn't want to contradict him. So it appears to be you, right? God.
Trump is such a successful bully, it's incredible. But what I want to figure out is whether or not that was the first time Trump was asked what he thought about the war in Iraq.
What would it matter? And he keeps saying, that was way before the war. That's what you've been saying. You've been saying you didn't just catch up eventually. You were against it before it even happened.
Right.
So you can't then say, that was way before it happened. But once it happened and way after it happened, then I was definitely against it. Well, then, yes, you joined the 60 to 70% of Americans who were against it by that point.
I like Anderson Cooper. I do. I certainly like him, I think, more than you guys. I think he's a good broadcaster, and I think he's done a pretty good job until this one.
Before Wednesday, you remember, I said I think he will ask follow-ups. I think he will ask hard questions, fine. And he didn't.
It's a hard job, and I think he's but there's no way any part of that question is okay. Because, first of all, if you guys aren't sure it's Donald Trump, then don't broadcast
Exactly.
it. Then don't talk like you have fact checkers. You have a partnership, you're CNN, you have a partnership with factcheck.org. Before you have that partnership, I guess you just put anything on the air you wanted, whatever you felt like it, for 20 years. So, there's a system. Of course it's him, or they wouldn't do it. You find that out. So, John, you get the best point is, it's the biggest cop-out question ever.
Was that you?
Do you remember it?
I didn't hear it.
I don't remember.
I didn't even write this down. Where am I?
Yeah, totally.
But guys, let's be fair. He was in the private sector.
Yeah, it was in the private sector.
What difference is
People ask you things all the time. Yeah.
That's the point he's making. I didn't have to be a politician. I knew it was wrong.
Right.
Oh, well, you can't say I was wrong to support it. I wasn't a politician.
By the way,
it's the exact opposite.
Technically, now he's still in the private sector, so I guess he can continue to say whatever he
He
wants.
can say whatever. He can be wrong all he likes.
Yeah, and we do know this, though. The first time you're asked a question, you can say whatever the hell you want, because it doesn't count.
Yeah. So what's amazing to me is that we disproved that Trump said anything about the Iraq War before the war began. It turns out, by the way, because of this new tape from Howard Stern, we were wrong. We thought he'd said nothing about it. It turns out he was actually in favor of it, right? But for all the media to come out and be like, oh my God, it turns out that he wasn't against the Iraq War before. We know.
Yeah.
We looked at all the stuff, and there is no record of Donald Trump being against the war before the war.
Yeah.
No record of it. So, but you let him get away with that for what, 6 months before you finally turn around because of a little bit of tape on Howard Stern?
Yeah.
And by the way, to be fair to the media, like right before the Howard Stern thing, they had finally, like John King on CNN and stuff, was like, wait a minute. We couldn't corroborate what Trump was saying. Of course, you can't corroborate anything he's saying.
It's incredible.
You should have done that fact-checking 6 months ago like we did.
So we don't have the Stephanopoulos clip.
I do, actually. I have a couple of quotes.
Okay, so go through the Stephanopoulos, because George Stephanopoulos gets an A.
Yes,
he asked if
he does.
he did it exactly right. But then, even at the end of the interview that you're about to read, you see the brilliance of Trump, because even crushed, he just comes back to the original point and then it ends. But
so
George
Stephanopoulos did
job.
actually. This is how you present the information and how you tie it into the message that that Trump has been spreading over the past, as you're saying, 6 months. So Stephanopoulos asked him. Now he plays the video. He says, "Now will you stop claiming you're the only one against the Iraq War before it began?" Donald Trump says, "No, that was long before the war began, and by the time the war began, I was saying, and I'm on the record as saying that we shouldn't go in."
True.
Which is not true. So George Stephanopoulos cuts in and says, "But you're not on record at all opposing the war before it began. There's simply no evidence of that, sir." Trump responds, "Well, there is evidence, and I'll find evidence, because I was against the war, and you can say the way I said it. That was long before the war started, and that was an interview. That was the first time I was ever actually asked that question." It sounds like I'm making fun of him by literally reading the things that he's said.
Palin-esque.
It's really, very Palin-esque.
amazing.
Well, and let's just note for the
It was
record.
just an interview.
When
It was just the first interview.
Yeah.
When he says there is evidence and I'll find it, that by definition means you don't have it.
Yeah.
Totally. because
There is no evidence that you were against it.
You're Donald Trump. You have limited resources. You would have found it. It would have been found.
And here is
Does
why.
somebody have a LexisNexis account here?
Exactly. And here is why, of course, this
Does
is
that still exist,
extremely
by the way?
significant. I think it does, actually. I think I actually have access to it. It's extremely significant whether he was on the right side or the wrong side of it, if you were to believe, for instance, that it may have been the worst decision ever made by a president in history to invade. And the person who said that was last night Donald Trump at the town hall. So it's the worst decision ever, a decision that you are now on the record as having supported at the time.
It's not a gotcha moment because of his unbounded braggadocio that he made a cornerstone of his campaign that he was against it beforehand, which goes to his brilliance because we just presumed that that was the case. Nobody found anything else. It turns out he was on the most popular radio show in the history of mankind and said the exact opposite. But somehow people were unable to find this.
Yeah.
And by the way, Stephanopoulos followed up his Palin-esque answer by saying again, no, you said you were for the invasion. Like when he's going like, I was there, he's like, no, you said you were for the invasion. But then what I liked was Trump's finish. Trump goes, you could see I was not exactly strongly in favor. That's the first time it was ever asked. But that was long before the war started. By the time the war started, I was against it. And in 2003, you have evidence that I was against, and I've been against it for years.
There is a quote.
But we know that we don't have any.
There's a quote of him in March 2013, or 2003. It was at an Oscars after party, and he said that the war's a mess.
But it already started.
But
it already started at that point.
That was the second time he was asked about the war.
Yeah, and that's totally fine that you were eventually against it. That's wonderful.
By the way, what has Donald Trump not said was a mess.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Exactly.
That didn't involve Donald Trump. Yeah. And the real quote, I don't know whether we're being fair or not to him, but was in 2004. fairly late in 2004, he did come out and say, no, this is going really wrong. I'm definitely against it, etc. Not just a passing, it's a mess, right? It was substantive. It was more substantive in 2004. But by that time, everybody knew it was a mess.
Yes.
We were having a giant election about what a mess it was.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I mean, there's just that half a sentence. And to be fair to Trump, the Howard Stern answer was, I guess so.
Right,
he's
right about that. It was a pretty soft, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah,
which is still on the wrong side of, I was strongly against it.
He didn't have strong thoughts on it because he doesn't have strong thoughts on any true political issue. Right now, as he's running for president, sure, yeah, he seems like he has strong beliefs or strong ideas, but he doesn't. Everything is shallow. Everything is fake, okay? He's never really thought about foreign policy. He's never really thought about, should we go to war with these countries prior to actually invading these countries? He's not a political figure. He's not a political thinker. He's a hack. He's a clown.
Yeah.
He's a fraud.
He's a mess.
And people keep treating him as if he's like this intelligent person who, oh my God, he might have actually considered the downsides of invading a country. He didn't think about it. He didn't care.
I guarantee you that if you had asked them, not just in 2003 or 2002, but in 04, maybe 06, maybe 08, maybe now, hey, it might be a mess in Iraq because of the difference between the Sunnis and the Shias. Go ahead and tell me what the Sunnis and the Shias are.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay, good luck.
Yeah.
And so,
by the way, Elizabeth Warren can ask that at the next debate on Fox.
Okay, and this is a very important distinction, guys. Part of the reason that he's successful so far is that he's said, I'm not a politician, right? People hate politicians, that's working. But don't confuse the two things, right? Politicians are run for office, often lie and are greasy and et cetera, and that's the stuff we don't like, right? But then when they get into office, they're supposed to do policy, and hence it's very important for them to know policy. So yes, Donald Trump is not a politician, like he's never run for office before. I guess you give him credit for that, although he lies like a politician, so I don't know how much credit we're supposed to give him. But the second part, the policy stuff, you don't give him credit for never doing policy. That's a bad thing.
Right.
You don't give him credit for not knowing anything about any policy. That's the bad part.
Exactly.
That's not a thing you should be like, oh, you don't know the difference between the Sunni and the Shia? You have no idea what's going on in Iraq or Iran or the Federal Reserve or anything else in the world? Way to go, Donald. You're just as dumb as I am.
He also can't seem to make up his mind about anything. He has some strong statements about the Bush administration, invading Iraq and how terrible it was and how Bush lied to the American people about weapons of mass destruction, right? He got a little bit of criticism for that, and then now all of a sudden he won't say it. He refuses to say it.
No, he's
a
deeply
clown.
political. And by the way, this whole thing of being against the Iraq war from the beginning, it's not like that's not political. The reason he's doing it is because he knows the overwhelming majority of the American people think the Iraq war was a mess, right? Now only about 20% thought we should have gone in there. So he's taking the side of 80%. Now, a lot of Republican politicians think that they can't do that because they've been defending that war for so long. But if you're not wedded to that, it is the more political thing to say, I was against it.
I thought I saw some number, and maybe I'm misremembering, this from this week of a percentage of close to 60% of Republicans still thought that the Iraq war was a good idea.
So, over 60% of Republicans still like George W. Bush. Okay.
I think it was that. I thought they liked the invasion.
There's probably a high correlation between
anyway,
those two
but yeah,
things.
maybe I might be misremembering.
And overall, I know the general number. I remember I just read it yesterday or the day before is in the 20s.
No, there would never be two separate poll numbers on anything either. all polls exactly match. That's what we've learned.
Yeah. And also he's coming out strong, and strength always helps with politics anyway.
Two just very quick things. One, it'd be nice if there were a candidate in either party who'd been against the invasion ahead of time, and we had documents of that. If only there was somebody. I can't.
It was Lincoln Chafee.
Voted on it.
Maybe he voted on it and given some speech,
maybe in public.
Maybe in public, like a public speech, not just like in his house. Then my best friend's a guy named Dan Hamilton, and my oldest friend, and he's got a sister, very funny. She teaches stand-up comedy or teaches improv. She's been an improv comedian for a long time. And a couple summers ago, she had an idea for a show. And you said strong thoughts, right? Because Trump does have strong thoughts. Yes. Right? But they're not based on anything.
They're not educated thoughts.
She thought this should just be a TV show, and it's so great. And it was just called Strong Opinions. Right? It would just be people, and they would essentially just yell about things they don't really know about. And that show is happening with every single Republican debate.
The five.
Yeah, it is. It's a show. It's just strong opinions where there's people yell like, "No, Apple, fix it, release it, invent it, make it happen, and release it to the government so we know the guy's phone." Yeah. Like nobody thinks, I don't know, we can't. There are implications, privacy, it doesn't matter. I don't know anything about this technology, but I have a very strong opinion about it.
I like that. We might do that on the Young Turks. Bananas! They're definitely great! Much better than grapes!
By the way, we already do it. We just haven't branded it.
And plus, I hope we have a little bit of more substance behind our strong thoughts. A little bit. Okay, we got to take a break here. We're going to come back. We got a lot more news for you guys. Go. Right, they might not be able to pay tuition, so backing Anna on that one. And then No Way backs John, says, John with the best point I have heard from anyone recently.
No, I don't believe this.
Yeah, already. This
you
is
don't even
factually.
have to say which. I just
factually.
Don't even
incorrect.
read that tweet. Let's move on.
And they say fight terrorism with hashtag green energy. Yes.
What was John's point? Actually,
let's make the oil worthless.
Oh,
yeah, right.
That was actually my fourth or fifth best point, but thank you for acknowledging it, though.
And I thought I said the same thing. But anyways, okay. And the members.
Once again, you get no credit for being right.
Yeah.
Once again. I can't catch a break, especially on this show.
No, I listen to Howard Stern. You actually said that you supported my idea.
But it was the first time I got asked that question.
First time.
Okay. Gilbert Rodriguez is member number 1110, and member number 1111 is Jonathan George. So Gilbert and Jonathan, you guys rock the world. You too can become a member at tytnetwork.com/join. Apparently, John and Anna did the last executive producer meeting phone call, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I had done a couple before that. Now you guys got me all jealous. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do the next one.
I don't know, what are those?
So for the guys who pay more to help support the show, we do a call with them once a quarter, and like, hey, and then we take their advice, input, etc.
Okay.
Apparently, Ben's not going to be on the call. Most honest show in the country. Okay. All right, we move forward. Anna, go.
All right. A wealthy man in Silicon Valley is calling out homeless people because he's tired of having to look at them, and now he's getting a lot of criticism for it on the internet. Justin Keller, the founder of Commando.io, is the person who wrote an open letter to the mayor of San Francisco, and he argued that the real problem was the effect the homeless have on the people around them who had, quote, earned the right to live in San Francisco. Now, I'm going to read you excerpts from his open letter just to give you a sense of why people are so upset with him. He says, I know people are frustrated about gentrification happening in the city, but the reality is we live in a free market society. The wealthy, working people have earned their right to live in the city. They went out, got an education, work hard, and earned it. Now, here's where it gets really bad. I shouldn't have to worry about being accosted. I shouldn't have to see the pain, struggle, and despair of homeless people to and from my way to work every day. I want my parents, when they come visit, to have a great experience and enjoy this special place. And then he says, I don't have a magic solution. It is a very difficult and complex situation, but somehow during Super Bowl, almost all of the homeless and riffraff seem to have up and vanish.
So I love that. I don't have a magic solution, but I do have one, and it's get them out of here.
Yeah,
pick them up, take them somewhere else.
It's okay, Ben, because they're riffraff.
Yeah, they're riffraff.
Okay, now look, there's a couple of different ways you could have written this. And if you said, look, the homeless situation in San Francisco is out of control and we all have to do something about it, that probably would have been well received.
That's right.
Like, because it's not like anyone who's gone to San Francisco doesn't realize that the homeless situation in San Francisco is out of control. We all see it. You could be the biggest liberal in the world and say, we got to do something about this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, the whole earned it stuff, he shouldn't have gone there. I do declare I've earned it.
Because it makes the assumption that everyone who's homeless in San Francisco is lazy and they're bums. And
they earned that.
They earned that, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Especially when you go to San Francisco, you can see it. It's right in front of you. A lot of them have mental health issues. A lot of them have addiction issues. And so to act as though you guys were all on an equal footing and they messed it up and so they deserve the situation they're in is beyond insensitive. It's just ignorant.
So all that would have been bad enough if he hadn't then gone to, I shouldn't have to see their struggle and their despair.
See, that's
like, oh, I'm sorry. Were they bothering you?
Yeah.
Like, look,
I don't like seeing despair.
Like, don't say that, dude. Then it became like an onion piece. Like, it was so over the top that I was like, hey, Anna, I wanted to ask you sure this is on the level? It sounds like he's like, this is what, like, way out of control rich people would say. I shouldn't have to see the despair of the poor.
The riffraff.
I think it's the riffraff that does that. It's a line out of like Rocky Horror. Like, oh, the peasantry. Like, when I drive by my BMW, I throw some coins at them. But I actually, like, the line about I shouldn't have to see the despair and the pain, and all of that could have been inside of, and that is why I, as the owner of Commando.io, are setting up a homeless shelter, because no one should have to see that, including them, including their families, the children who are homeless, should not have to see the pain and the despair, and that's why we should solve it. Instead, it's that, I know it's a problem, it's always going to be a problem, but let's please just, get them away. It's like he's treating them like they're radioactive waste. We got to store it somewhere, but I don't want it near my town, and that's terrible. They're people.
I think the where this goes wrong is and it's a wrong way of them. First of all, this guy, you couldn't bear to be in a room with this guy. I mean, this guy's bad for America. He's the guy we ought to deport.
He's a commando.
We'd get a little better. What do? They sell,
I shouldn't have to see this.
Apparently, some sort of server management.
Oh, it's not an underwear issue.
I don't use it. No. You don't make a lot of money off of having people not
That's what was
wearing
confused me. I was like, this guy's like an underwear magnet. But the server thing, that makes more sense. The residents of this amazing city, he writes, no longer feel safe. Again, a fair opener, right?
Yeah.
I know people are frustrated about gentrification happening in the city. Okay, so it all comes on where he goes after the comma. And this is just the way this kind of guy thinks. But the reality is we live in a free market society. Like, he lays down a fact, and that's the end of that fact. Like, no, that's it. Capitalism wins no matter what. It's unchecked. It's unfettered. That's it. I won. You lose. This is how it is. When, of course, that's not how it is. Yeah. I mean, yes, we live in a free market society, but I got news for you. We have 1,000 checks and balances on that free market society. The Koch brothers want there to be 2. We want there to be 1,500, right? Bernie Sanders wants there to be 1 billion. Right? But, so, I mean, that's a debate. But he just thinks that, well, we live in a free market society, so I have money, I have power, gentrification, I get to do it. I get to move everybody out, and I get to send them anywhere that is out of my sight line and put them into the sight line of people who have less money than I do and therefore less power.
So I think the most interesting part of this is what we've talked a lot about on the show, which is the different bubbles that people live in. And in this bubble, there's a lot of conversations about how we earned it.
Right.
And part of the reason for that, to be fair to them, is that a lot of these guys work super hard.
A lot of them earned it.
Yeah. They work 80 hours. A lot of them are entrepreneurs, 100 hours, etc. But that doesn't mean that other people are riffraff and dirtbags and degenerates. In fact, in 2013, Greg Goatman, who was the CEO of Angel Hack, called them degenerates, the homeless, and said that they have to realize, quote, that it's a privilege to be in the civilized part of town.
Oh my God.
Okay. So now, to be fair to Goatman, he then later said that was the worst mistake of my life. I shouldn't have said that, which is a great response to saying something terrible, right? And then looked into, well, okay, then what can we do constructive about the homeless problem in San Francisco, and found out, and this is funny, you give them homes. Okay, so now I know it sounds like, no, what are you, Bernie Sanders? Oh yeah, you're just going to give them. No, Salt Lake City. It's not like Utah is overly liberal. Salt Lake City is more liberal than the rest of Utah, but they did this program that surprised me. Anna and I covered on the show before. It turns out that building homes where they could have reasonable, safe places to live is actually cost the government a lot less money than the other issues, and works relatively well as long as they are clean enough, safe enough that people will come back to them. And now they're thinking maybe in San Francisco we should do that. Yes, you should. And it's not just, and I get it, man. You don't want to be accosted. I got friends who got spit on by homeless people in San Francisco. So I've been there where people, homeless guys have started to come at me.
Yeah,
right?
They're aggressive and they're persistent.
Yes. And so, and it's because a lot of them have mental health issues.
Yep.
I don't think, degenerate riffraff. I think we got to get that guy some help.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what a normal, decent human being would think. But, just quickly going back to the Salt Lake City story, of course people have this negative knee-jerk reaction to it because, I worked hard to earn my home. Why are we just going to give homes away to people who didn't earn it, right? But what ended up happening to people who have homes in that area is their property values went up. Because if you take homeless people, you put them in homes, you give them an opportunity where they can find jobs and be in a safe environment, well, then you're not going to see a bunch of people on the streets anymore, and property values go up. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Also, if you're so upset about people who didn't earn it getting a home, then sell all your assets and be homeless and get a free home.
I got news for you. You're not going to do that.
Lay it.
Right.
But back to that earning point, they went out, got an education, worked hard, and earned it. And so, and like Cenk and like all of us, I'm sympathetic to that, and there's admiration that goes into earning it. But earning it gives you the right to live where you want. It doesn't give you the right to send other people to live where they don't want.
10-second point, just because this is another example of a conservative, like free market. I earned it, they didn't earn it. How many minutes of research into his background would you have to do to find government loans that allowed him to go to college or that helped him to make his first company? Commando.io, you don't think that he had any help from the SBA or anything like that?
He bought his first pair of underwear. He didn't buy it himself.
And I got news for you. In Silicon Valley, everybody's got investors. It's all built on VCs and all that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a pretty good system. So somebody helped you, right?
Yeah.
And you built a good business, and that's why they invested, and then they made money, presumably, although you sell invisible underwear. But it's not like, I did it all on my own. And if you did, that means your dad was really rich.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
All right. MAC Cosmetics got a, I suppose, not so surprising reaction from a photo that they posted on their Instagram page featuring a black woman's lips. Now, MAC Cosmetics, of course, is a cosmetics company, and they were featuring the woman's lips to show a deep color purple lipstick. Well, unfortunately, some of the comments were not so kind and extremely racist. Now, if you take a look at some of those comments, which MAC has now deleted, some people said that they unfollowed just because of that picture. There was also a longer comment that seems like it was trolling. I don't know whether or not this was meant to be a real comment, but black women will never be as beautiful as white women, yada, yada, yada. You can see it. One person says that they're fish lips, just a number of insanely hideous comments. So, again, another example of a black woman getting criticized for her natural features, when at the same time you have white women like Kylie Jenner injecting her lips and getting celebrated for having extremely thick lips.
Or at the very least, non-black women.
Yes.
Like, nobody's like, Sofia Vergara, I hate your gigantic lips. Like, nobody says that. They only say that to black women, typically.
Who follows Mac on Instagram?
A lot of people.
Racist people who really like makeup.
Why? Why would you follow it? I don't know. What's the point?
They probably offer deals.
Followed. I don't get it either.
They get followed because they advertise their latest products and people decide whether or not they want to buy it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking like...
I don't get subjected to enough advertising, so I can see that. Yeah, I'm going to volunteer for some more ads.
I follow Commando underwear.
That just showed commercials and wouldn't interrupt it with some sort of entertainment program.
I would say that the two things that get the most follows on Instagram specifically are health and fitness type stuff, which is why you get a ton of pictures of unbearable women posing with protein shakes, and then you also have makeup artists.
Yeah.
So this doesn't surprise me with that.
I love that this is exposed to human behavior that Ben can't stand. Following advertising.
The racism I don't mind.
I was going to say, I think you missed the larger story.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things on this. First of all, I actually think people are flipping out too much over it. Oh, we found racist online. Yeah. Really? You don't say, right? You could have almost had racist online on anything. Like, put any picture of a black person online and some racist douchebag. No, a dozen racist douchebags will show up and be like, oh, yeah. And they'll
go to town hall. Do a search for Obama. Read the comments. There it is.
Yeah, that's a conservative website. And then those will also be the first guys to say, there's no racism. You guys talk about racism too much, and I hate her black lips. Right? Yeah. So I know those guys exist, and it's super not surprising that they would do it even to a benign picture of lips. And by the way, if that guy's not trolling, he's like, and you find white women more attractive than black women, good for you.
Have at it.
Yeah, go for it, big guy. But you don't have to gratuitously come online and be like, I don't like your black lips.
I know, they're just ugly, hideous people. But look, the point that I want to make about it, more than the point that racist people exist, because of course they exist, is just this huge double standard when it comes to the the beautiful natural features of black women and how they're constantly criticized for it. But when it comes to white women, if they alter their natural features so they look more black, they get celebrated for it, right? Yeah. Whether it's kinking their hair or injecting their lips or injecting their butts, whatever it is.
Although honestly, with the Jenners and the Kardashians recently, it's somewhat more fair. They get criticized for it all the time. I bet the hair, for the lips, for the ass.
There are young girls, teenage girls right now that are asking their parents for lip injections because Kylie Jenner injected her.
I got it, but I bet Kylie Jenner's Instagram account has a ton of racism in it because well, Chloe's does. Chloe's got it most of her life. I only do that because of Howard, because I can't believe I drove around the block listening to Khloe Kardashian. That's how good Howard Stern is his job. I couldn't believe it. But you know, so I mean, I hear you. I mean, obviously there's a double standard there, but I think John's right. I suspect that they get plenty of that racist venom too. Like, why are you trying to look black? Why are you trying to look black?
Yeah, I mean, they do get criticism. Don't get me wrong, but when they're looked at, it's like, wow, look at how beautiful they are.
That's
you know.
Yeah. All I'm asking from the internet is, if you're the dude making comments about black people, then don't turn around and tell us that there's no racism, because you can't have it both ways, right? You can't say, oh, look at those ugly black lips and ugly black features, and black people are always committing crime and black people are doing this. You go, why are you guys complaining about racism? Because of you, dick.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, since when was it unattractive to have full lips?
Yeah.
Right? Like never.
Like when has anyone ever said in the history of lips, like, oh my God, those lips are they're full, they're unattractive?
Your lips are super thin and hot.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, if you don't put lipstick, I can't even see them. Yeah.
When are full stomachs going to
little
get
strips
back in
of sandpaper?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, forward.
All right, a rare dolphin died on a beach after beachgoers found it and took various selfies with it. Now, we have a video of what occurred. Let's take a quick look at it. Now, that video is mostly to show you guys that the dolphin was alive. There were some rumors that the dolphin had washed ashore and it was dead to begin with. No, the dolphin was alive. And the type of dolphin is rare. It's known as the La Plata dolphin. And they're considered vulnerable, and their population is in decline, although exact numbers remain unclear. Although they are one of the world's smallest species of dolphins, they can live to be up to 20 years old and are highly intelligent.
Yeah. So, look, I get it.
What happened? I mean,
They started taking selfies and they started petting it and
passing it around.
Right.
I mean, it's supposed to be in water.
Air.
Right. And then it was out of the water too long, so it died.
It overheated.
And so dolphins have to be in the water, right? After a while, they can be out for a little bit. It's like somebody cut off our oxygen supply to pet us. And they're like, oh, nice human. Here, let's take a picture with the human. I can't breathe, right? They're not bad people. They probably didn't know, right? But there's a big crowd. It's a big crowd. Somebody could have Googled it or raised their hand and be like,
people don't correct when crowds do.
We should at some point put them back in the water. Right.
By the way, so the argument that, like, oh, don't worry, it was already dead. Passing around the dead dolphin, also a little bit messed up. I wouldn't do that either.
Nobody takes a selfie with a dead dolphin.
Yeah.
I know Instagram. Nope.
So, this article honestly got a little too environmentally conscious for me, because I'm a bad guy. They're like, don't go near the dolphins because it disturbs their natural environment, and in order to avoid your boat, they might have to go a little further for a fish, and then they might get hungry. Okay, dude, I like to see the dolphins in the water, okay? When I see a dolphin in the water, okay, yeah, maybe I take a picture of it, okay? And I show my kids. Get off my ass. At the same time, don't take the dolphin out and kill it. Okay, can we find some balance in our lives?
But also, there's the whole thing about not just enjoying the moment. Like, you see the dolphin, you enjoy it, you leave it alone, you move on with your life, right? Having to be in a picture with the dolphin, like, what is it about us needing to take pictures of every moment of our lives in order to show everyone that it actually happened? It happened. Okay, it's in our memories. Let's just enjoy that and move on.
Yeah, I'm a hypocrite on that, because you're right. But I was among I didn't offend as much as other people. I went to see Bruce Springsteen last night in a different city.
How many times have you seen Bruce Springsteen?
45.
30, something like that. Yeah. But so I see him, every tour is different. And this is, no, but it is. I mean,
I love how much you love him.
No, but I mean, every tour is different. They're doing a specific
Yeah.
thing. I mean, they got a new album, It's
Agree to disagree.
well, I mean, all Turks are the same. They're all.
Ben, I'll go with you sometime.
Yeah. No, I mean, every tour is totally different, and it's. I mean, it's like saying.
That's how I feel about Gwen Stefani.
No,
every Turk I know in LA is an overweight entrepreneur. So you might be right.
I already saw. You know what? I saw a George Clooney movie. I don't need to see another.
Well, some people.
From what I've heard of Hail Caesar, maybe you should think that way.
So anyway, so I go to see Springsteen last night, and I had good standing. I was on the floor, and and when he comes close, and you start taking pictures, right?
Uh-huh.
And I thought the same thing. I'm like, guys, you're not like this is great. This is a moment. Like people go to this because men cry and women get excited, and everybody. If you feel
okay, now
closer,
I'm definitely not.
No, you feel closer to your No, I made friends with these crazy guys who got super stoned last night.
Okay,
I mean, guys, you're
bonding.
bonding. You're talking to people. You're giving hugs to strangers. It's nice. You feel good about humanity for 3 hours, and then, because I sing these songs to my daughter, I FaceTimed while he was singing 2 of those songs.
Uh-huh.
And so there I am holding the phone, and Josie's listening, and I'm like,
no, that's different.
Thank you. Okay.
That's different because that's like
at least we were having a different kind of moment.
Sharing that.
That was sharing
that
moment.
allowed her to be there in the moment,
Yeah.
which is exactly what we're saying is important in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's when it's like the fireworks and you have to see. And I'm sure that if you go back to my Instagram at some point, I took a picture or video of fireworks, but no one has ever gone back hey, 2 years ago, I think I took a video of fireworks. Let me watch that again. Nobody's ever done that. You don't do that. And as Louis C.K. has pointed out, we were brought into this world with amazing high-def eyes. And you can watch in many frames per second real life going on around you.
Is Louis C.K., have you seen his show, Louis? Because I only watched one episode.
Yeah, I have.
No, it's good.
Once I saw one, I didn't want to watch another episode of the show.
By the way,
I saw a show with that Jerry Seinfeld guy, and he had his 3 friends. It looked funny, but I stopped after one.
Okay. Did you take Bruce out of the water and accidentally kill him?
I did. We were passing him around.
Okay.
By the way, but he did body surf over the crowd, so people were taking pictures, passing around. Put him back on stage! Put him back on stage or he'll die!
I went and saw Louis C.K. At the place nearby. He was doing his stand-up. Would it not have been weird if I had gone back and seen that same show 2 or 3 more times?
Well, if you'd seen the exact same show 2 or 3 more times for a comedian, I suppose, but I suspect it would have been a little different. But no, not if you got something out of it.
Okay.
No, I mean.
No, we're largely.
Okay, you're consistent.
Yeah. No, we're largely agreed. Ben's a weirdo. Okay.
I did see the new Star Wars 3 times.
Going to many Bruce Springsteen concerts is the least weird thing anyone's ever done. All right, we got to take a quick break here. We'll come back. We got more stories for you, including the fake gynecologist.